Hello and welcome back to the Claret podcast. Your eyes do not deceive you. It's only me for today's post-match show after Aston Villa's 3-2 win over Luton Town on Saturday night. We wanted to record a post-match show yesterday, obviously. If you follow Dan on Twitter, then you'll know that he has just moved house and Virgin Media have screwed him over. They haven't installed his Wi-Fi, yet, meaning that we couldn't bring you a post-match show yesterday. But I thought, well, after another Aston Villa win, we have to talk about it for at least 20 minutes. So yeah, here I am on my own. So hopefully this doesn't go too badly wrong. Villa's 17th win of the season, which is it's just remarkable at this stage of the campaign. Villa can theoretically they're not going to just pick and choose victories. We want to win every game, every remaining match that we have this season. Hopefully our season won't end until late May in Athens. But in terms of the Premier League, we have 11 games left now. And, if we win 5, we're definitely going to be finishing the top 5, where it's top 4. We'll get onto that later. But anyway, permutations, that can rest till later. But I've been looking at them for quite some time. So that's the first thing that's come into my head. But we'll start with, I suppose, the first half from yesterday. I think, to be honest, it's probably worth saying from the top, it doesn't really matter how Villa are going to get their wins in the remaining, less than 3 months of the season now. It's all about getting over the line, whether you are going for the title, as we saw Liverpool winning late at Forest yesterday as well, whether you're scrapping against relegation like Luton are, like Forest are, Everton, other teams as well, or you go for Champions League like Villa and Tottenham, Man United. You have to put in that conversation at the moment. They play obviously Man City later, and we will, get on to that again later in my little mini show here. But I don't want to kind of jinx anything to do with them, because we know we've been scarred by them previously, and it could happen again. You never know. But Villa are in a really good position right now. 3 wins in a row. 3 away wins in a row as well, for the first time in 13 months. Started really well against Luton. They were totally dominant, Villa, in the first half. At half time, actually, when I went to get my my half-time pie, I was speaking to some of the Luton Town media team, and they were saying this is probably the best footballing team that we've come up against this season, which, Villa are 4th, but I think for some of us fans, especially me, I think it's still getting used to Villa are bloody good, and hearing those things, even from where we came from, 2 years ago, even a year ago, Villa weren't nailed on to be getting Europe at all. We had to put in a certain amount of wins to try and get near the top 7, really. We were around 10th for a long time, and look where we are now. We are, again, I'll talk about the second half later on, but let's just focus on the big positives of the first half so far. Villa were in total control. It was the perfect away performance in the first half. Very similar, in fact, to the United game, and as we'll get on to, it was similar to the defeat at Old Trafford in some ways. Of course, we won this time. But there was no moment, again, like the United game, where I felt threatened by Luton, and that was full credit to Villa. Again, people I was speaking to at half-time, they did mention that, going toe-to-toe with City, that might have played a factor as well. But I don't know, I just think Villa played very well. Everything Emery warned against in the first half, Villa kind of mitigated. I think there was probably one attempt it wasn't even on target, one attempt from Luton, which was Andros Townsend's header, I think, which went over the bar. Maybe there was something in additional time as well. I think Ross Barker had a free kick as well. Obviously got blocked by the Villa wall. But Villa weren't under threat, and they were full value for their 2-0 lead. They probably should have had more. Ollie Watkins, of course. I'll speak about him soon, but just tremendous, phenomenal player. At halftime as well, mentioning to the reporters near me, because we were joking about, how does Harry Kane get in the England team for the Euros? It kind of made me think, well, actually, he's not playing like Kane in terms of Kane dropping deep and trying to link play like that, but his impact is like Harry Kane, is like a top forward. But then, he is a top forward now because he's having this impact in games throughout the course of the season. He is one of the best strikers in Europe, hands down, 100%. He's the second best striker in the Premier League. I'm not saying he's going to get to Haaland's level, but he's even closed that gap. There's still a gap, of course, but he's closing that gap even because he's getting even better. Just remarkable, the impact he's having, because he's scoring goals, yes, but he's getting chances. He doesn't take every chance, because if he did, he'd be scoring 4 goals a game. But he's a constant nuisance, and it must be a nightmare to play against. He always was, a nightmare to play against, in my opinion. I mean, luckily I don't have to play against him. But my point being that he's always harrying defences, rushing them in possession. He's always on the shoulder as well. He never had the movement, because he was never coached by Emery before, to this level even. But he always had the attributes to become this player, and Emery has just taken him on to a whole nother level. And it's scary because, again, in the last few weeks, I've seen evidence that he can actually get better still, which is to say it's very good news for Villa. But yeah, Watkins, 2 goals, takes his tally up to 16 now, so 4 goals away from getting 20 in a league campaign for Villa. Just, sensational. He is the difference maker now, and he is inevitably going to break Villa's all-time Premier League goal scoring record held by Gabby Bonlaw. Directly involved in 26 league goals as well this season, which is the outright most of any player in the competition. I saw a couple of Twitter videos and whatnot from was it a Saturday Social clip, and I don't think Watkins featured in their top 10 or top 20 players of the season. I shouldn't have even brought that up, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about Villa, what they're doing this season, what they could achieve, or the players that we have. But it's just remarkable how we can still go under the radar like that, or our players can still go under the radar like that. We have one of the best strikers in the world football. We have one of the best midfielders in the Premier League in Luiz, centre-backs in Torres, Konsa, Martinez, who isn't so much under the radar, but won't get the credit I don't think he deserves. I won't say not from Villa fans, but even in the second half, when he was relieving so much pressure, I thought, there aren't many goalkeepers who would catch the ball, relieve this pressure off this Villa defence as many times as what Martinez has in the game. And again, come the end of the season, it'll be Watkins, it'll be Bailey, it'll be these players who are up for kind of all the credit. But we'll sit back and think, actually, Martinez probably saved us between this amount of points and this amount of points. So, yeah, fantastic goalkeeper. I could go from 1 to 11. I could go from back to front in the team and pick out, more key performers. But yeah, just specifically in that first half, Watkins, of course, excellent. Douglas Luiz as well, really good thinking, quick thinking to put Watkins away for the second goal. I thought Cash did well. He had the kind of an unenviable task of dealing with Doughty, Ogbene and Chong all on that left side. They combined very well, and they combined very well in other games as well. They combined very well on that left side. I think Ogbene moved over to the right to Alex Moreno, which causes problems. Kind of spoke volumes of Cash's good performance in the first half. Konsa, again, excellent, fits into the centre-back role. He didn't misplace a single pass yesterday, which is, again, remarkable. In midfield, I thought John McGinn did well in the first half. So I remember I walked up the steps to take a look at the pitch, have a look around the stadium. Obviously never been to Kenilworth Road before. And straight away I thought John McGinn's going to like this game, because I don't think it's as tight a pitch as what people make it out to be, if I'm being totally honest. But it was the kind of the environment. And I was like, okay, yeah, John McGinn will relish this. And he did, especially in the first half. Again, I'll move on to it soon, but the second half lacked control, and that obviously had an impact across the team. But yeah, Villa were totally dominant in the first half. It was an excellent performance. As I said, the people I was speaking to half time said this is probably the best footballing team that we've come up against. They said as well that no one has controlled Luton like this at Kenilworth Road at all this season, and limited them to so many chances. As I said, they barely had a sniff, and it was all Villa. It could have been more goals. But we go into half time, and I didn't expect Luton to come out and do what they did. I thought they'd be, more aggressive, and they'd be more dangerous, I suppose, because in the first half, as I say, Villa controlled them and contained them so well. But I didn't expect Villa to manage the game so poorly as what they did. And that is an issue, because, as I said, we've seen this now against Man United. We've seen Villa lack that control in the second half of games, similar to United and Luton, without conceding as many goals as they did in those games. But it is something I'm worried about to an extent. However, what I would say is that I mentioned earlier, teams are now scrapping for points. Teams like Forest, who again, we didn't manage the game particularly well against the previous weekend. Teams like Luton, at this point in the season, as Villa know from previous campaigns, teams start picking up points where you do not expect them to. And I believe Tottenham play Forest and Luton, but I think they're both at home, which obviously helps them. But there will be games now towards the end of the season where those teams pick up points where you don't expect them to. So I think it's huge for Villa that they've kind of avoided that kind of banana skin. United were lucky to as well. At Kenilworth Road last month, to the point where in the first half they got 2 dodgy goals, which gave them really good, kind of head start as such. Luton then came back in the game pretty much straight away. And United did have chances after that, but they didn't control the game as well as what Villa did, at least for the first, 50 to 55, 60 minutes of the game, that sort of thing. The point I'm trying to make here is that towards the back end of the season, I don't think Villa are playing many teams who are scrapping at the moment. Sheffield United and Burnley, for me, are good as gone, if not gone, by the next few weeks. I don't know where they are in the table. For me, Burnley and Sheffield United are as good as gone. Villa have obviously played them twice, doesn't really matter. I think Tottenham play them last 2 games of the season, Burnley and Sheffield United. So that's probably 6 points for Tottenham there. But Villa have played Everton home and away. They've played Luton home and away now. They've played Nottingham Forest home and away. And I don't think there'll be too many other teams in the relegation scrap, if being totally honest. I think you've got Brentford, you've got Palace. But I expect those teams to be okay. I think they'll pick up enough points. But yeah, Luton, Everton and Forest especially, they will be scrapping now. And they'll be, fighting tooth and nail. And, if Villa were to have drawn yesterday, it would have been gutting because we were 2-0 up and we didn't manage the game well. But as I say, you can't take any game for granted now towards the end of the season. So that's why it's so important just to get over the line. But that doesn't take away that Villa was still poor in the second half. They didn't manage the game well, as I say. Luton are especially good at set pieces. I don't know exactly what the statistic is, but it's something remarkable. Like half of the goals have come from set pieces, not directly, but from second balls, set piece routines, from corners, free kicks, even throw-ins, that sort of thing. And it's second balls because they usually win the first one as well. So basically routines, they know what they're doing. And fair play to Rob Edwards. This is a team who are, littered with championship players, with all due respect, that, that is their level. But as a collective, they are showing that they can be a Premier League team and they will compete. And as I mentioned earlier, Emery warned against them, staying in games throughout the period of 90 minutes, and that's what they did against Newcastle and United, other teams as well. They were a match for Liverpool up until 60 minutes or so. City, they got thumped in the cup, but they were still on the front foot trying to score goals. So Villa, they had to control the game in the first half and then mitigate everything that they were doing in the first half in the second half as well. It was never going to be an easy second period, and as we found out, it wasn't to be a smooth ride at all. Villa were giving away too many free kicks, too many corners. They were conceding too much territory in their own half as well. So I think while Villa's you could criticise them from a defensive point of view, from those set pieces, etc. But I actually just think the game management was to blame in this situation, because even if Luton had half the free kicks they had or half the corners, they probably don't score twice or even once, to be honest, because if you're going to keep giving them those opportunities, they will score. So that for me was the kind of reason why Villa was so poor, because they lost all control pretty much. And speaking to Ian Taylor after the game, he mentioned that yes, you can blame Villa defensively, but at the same time, there aren't many players there who can compete with these Luton players in the box, because I totally agree. Konsa can win his headers. Watkins can as well. He's got a very good jump on him, but you're looking at those two and maybe Longley, but there's not a lot else who are gonna stand up and battle in the air, and who are above 6 foot ultimately. So these Luton players knew that they would have an advantage if they could, hold some balls in the box. And again, this isn't to kind of discredit what Luton were doing in the game, because it sounds quite negative, kind of just talking about the set pieces. But this is how they play their football, and they've changed over the last few weeks, because what they do now, instead of kind of respecting the opposition a bit more and playing a bit more defensive, they are more on the front foot, which gave Villa a kind of leg up, I suppose, in the first half, because they were pushing onto them, and they'd be playing these direct balls and basically trying to win knockdowns and second balls and kind of applying pressure in the final third. That was the game. But that's why I also thought Villa would come here and win, because it was a case of, well, if they can get out of that press when Luton are trying to suffocate the likes of Douglas Luiz, etc., they can play 1-2-3 and then bang, Watkins is in on goal. And that happened a few times. Again, it should have been more in the first half, but in the second half that changed, because Villa were poor, and I felt like they were probably playing for the counter-attack as well. There was that one chance that Watkins had when he was played in on goal. I think he cut inside, but there was a time effort. If that goes in, game's done then, and Villa would be praised for kind of soaking up pressure and then hitting them on the counter. And that was the game plan, I think. Of course, we wanted more control than what we did, but I think we were happy to, kind of get through it. And that wasn't, to be the case, because Luton have got some experts from set pieces, and they're always going to cause those problems. And we invited too much pressure, I think, is the key point here. But of course, it wouldn't be a repeat of the United collapse. Weirdly, I don't know how to quite put this, but I didn't want Villa to concede the equaliser. Of course I didn't. But a part of me thought, you know what, if Villa do concede an equaliser, they've got a better chance of winning the game, even though they were winning at the time, if that makes sense. Because I can't quite remember what minute Carlton Morris scored, 72nd minute, something like that. But Villa had a good 15, 20 minutes to find a winner at that point. And of course, the game would then be more open. It would be, in Villa's favour to then find a winner, because at this point, when Luton were, when Luton had halved the deficit and it was 2-1, Villa couldn't get out and they were struggling. They were on the back foot, and it was basically inevitable that they were going to concede that equaliser. And when it came, I just thought, well, okay, let's see what you've got. And I believe John McGinn had an effort cleared off the line, I think, when it was 2-2 at Old Trafford, which would have made it 3-2 to Villa. I think it came at that point, always to make it 3-1. Can't quite remember. But the point being, Villa were then allowed to kind of push on Luton again, because Luton thought, okay, well, we've got a draw. We're not going to go as gung-ho as what we were. And I think that helped Villa, and obviously they got the goal. I thought, to be fair, Villa would then control and make more chances before Luca Dean scored. In the end, it turned out to basically be one opportunity, and they took it. It was obviously two of Emery's subs as well, Diaby and Luca Dean combining, and that's now 11 points that Villa have won from the from goals from the 85th minute onwards in league matches this season. 11 points. That's the difference between being where United are and where Villa are now. And maybe that says a lot about the different mentalities of the two teams. I don't know. Maybe there's an argument to be made there. The top teams always find a way, and that's exactly what Villa did yesterday to put another huge 3 points on the board. So, a fantastic victory, and one that has opened Villa's gap, I suppose, to United to another 3 points. So 11 points at the moment. Again, at the time of recording this, United haven't kicked off against City yet. Most people, I'm sure, will expect City to beat United. I don't think it'll be a convincing scoreline. I hope it is. But I'm never going to rule United out in this race for top 4, top 5. I'm just not, because I can't tempt the footballing gods, because we know what happens next. But Villa are now getting to the situation where it is, I know this might sound a bit kind of overdue, but it's in their hands now, to the point where they can win, 5 of their next 11 and basically confirm at least 5th. Of course, if they beat Tottenham next week, then that will be, a huge shot in their arm to, getting 4th. But I think there's a long way to go in the race for 4th, even if Villa were to win. I've said before, Villa, as we know, Villa go to City, they go to Arsenal, they host Liverpool, they go to Brighton, they play Wolves, they go to West Ham. I do think Villa's run is very difficult. Not to say that Tottenham's isn't challenging as well. And I think they will drop points too. As I say, home to Luton, home to Forest. Those aren't bankers. They play Liverpool, they play Arsenal, they play City, they play Another top team as well. Can't quite remember who the other team is. Thinking off the top of my head now. Villa, of course, as well. They go to Chelsea too, which has never been easy for them. So the run-ins are difficult for all three teams. But as I say, Villa are now at a situation where if they win 5 of their last 11, so they're 5 home games before they play Liverpool at home. So that would be Tottenham, Chelsea, Wolves, Bournemouth, and Brentford. If they can win those 5 games, they'll be on 70 points. That's obviously taking away all of the away games, which I don't think Villa will lose all of them. In fact, I know they won't. So, yeah, that would give Villa basically a huge opportunity to finish 4th. And it basically rules United out of getting top 5, because then United would then have to win 9 of their last 11 if they lose to City for them to get 71 points. Because at the moment, as I say, it's 11 points, but it's basically 12 because of Villa's far superior goal difference on Man United. And 5th place, is looking likely still to get Champions League at the moment. That is obviously dependent on what English clubs do in their respective European competitions. But, barring a kind of a catastrophic knockout phase for City, Arsenal, Liverpool, West Ham, Brighton and Villa, then you'd like to think that 5th place would get an extra ticket for the Champions League ahead of the Bundesliga, for example, who only have a few teams left in the competition, and the likes of Freiburg, even Bayern Munich, to be honest, they shouldn't be going far in Champions League, and Freiburg in the Europa League. So yeah, a long way to go still. But Villa are now at the point in which, as I say, they can, again, they're not going to pick and choose where they get their wins, but we now know what we need to do to achieve it. It's in our hands. We know that 5 wins is going to basically secure it. Pretty much, and a couple of draws here and there, fantastic, job done. Champions League football comes back to Villa. The only, I suppose, blot on the win was Jacob Ramsey coming off a foot injury again. He'll get that scan today. They'll know the results, by this afternoon, whatever it may be. Whether it's related to his previous injury, I'm not totally sure, but obviously it's far from ideal, and he wanted to continue. He had to come off. He didn't limp off the pitch in terms of around the perimeter, but it's a sad situation because he's been excellent, I think, in the last few weeks, and he's got back up to fitness. He's regained his confidence after quite a few games, I think. I didn't expect him to come back, with a bang straight away. But it took him a little bit of time to kind of get back in the running of things. I think it was like the Middlesbrough game that he looked a bit more like himself, but then it wasn't until really Fulham, I suppose, that or Man United even, that he started to look like the Jacob Ramsey that we had seen last season. So that's a real shame for him. I don't know where that leaves him in terms of, can he play a part of the next month, season? I don't know. It's all speculation at the moment, but it's not good that he's picking up these, similar injuries, or I presume similar. Not a good situation. But it opens the door for, the next man to step up. And that was Morgan Rogers, who actually I thought was excellent in the first half. I really did. He played 60 minutes or so, came close to scoring, what would have been a fantastic goal of, potentially maybe not a goal of the season contender when John Duran exists, but, that was going top corner before Thomas Kaminski tipped the ball over the bar. Really good save. And to be fair, the Luton keeper is a very good goalkeeper. I expect him to be in the Premier League or in one of the top divisions if Luton are relegated this season. Performed really well and kept the scoreline down for sure in the first half. But yeah, Rodgers was really good for me, especially in the first period. Again, the second half was difficult to judge him because Villa managed the game poorly, and I don't think him playing as a left winger, there's not a whole lot he can do. I mean, yes, maybe he could have committed less fouls, but he's learning, and completed 100% of his dribbles. Made 2 chances in the game, and that beautiful flick as well in the second half that nearly created an opportunity did create an opportunity. Sorry, I think that was for Watkins again. But yeah, he impressed me. He came off for tactical reasons, Emery said, after full time, which is obvious. I think he played well, but at that point in the game, Villa needed more control. They needed kind of more wouldn't say necessarily experience, but Emery clearly saw something that he needed to tweak in that moment, which is fine. And he said as well, someone asked him, how did Rodgers take being subbed then? And Emery said, very good, no issue. It's, this is a team game. There's 11 players on the pitch and 9 substitutes. So, there's different ways to win games, and doesn't mean that you can't sub players who've already been subbed. Leon Bailey came off against Liverpool after coming on for Diego Carlos. I think Villa fell behind to Szoboszlai early on, didn't they? And then Carlos came off in the 11th minute or something. Bailey came on, then came off later in the match, and that was arguably the start of Leon Bailey's renaissance for Aston Villa. So it's never a bad thing if Unai Emery is your manager when you come off, because it's not personal. It's a tactical decision, and it's worked before with Bailey. So there's no issue there. And Rodgers is not the type of player to be particularly down about that decision or whatever it may be. He'll pick himself up and it'll be fine. So that was the only kind of blot on the night. Ramsey coming off, but ultimately 3 points in the bag. Again, as I say, Villa can now kind of look towards, again, dangerous game. This is not what they'll be doing, but you can now target specific matches and think, well, if they win there, and there, that's 70 points. And, let's say a couple of draws here and there. Villa don't lose many games this season, or haven't lost many games this season, sorry. And have only lost to a handful of teams. Of course, they lost twice to United and Newcastle, which is so frustrating. But it is what it is. It can happen in a campaign. And going towards the last 11 games of the season now. In fact, I've got some stats here about what Villa have done basically in their 16, 11 game cycles this campaign. So they've picked up a maximum of 26 points in 11 games. So that's from game 1 of the season to game 11, or game 2 to game 12. That cycle. The lowest was 18 points from 11 games, which if they get 18 points, then they're going to get Champions League or at least top 5. Their average over 11 games is 22 points, so nearly 23 points actually. So they're well capable of getting 11 points from the last 11 games of the season. And that would crown what has been, at least so far, just a remarkable campaign. You just hope that in the Conference League we can continue to match that. We go to Ajax on Thursday. Myself and Dan will be back on Monday for a Q&A, maybe a couple of other videos as well. Dan has asked me to ask you to leave your comments, your thoughts, anything you like in the comment section for us to answer on tomorrow's episode. Again, apologies for the kind of impromptu podcast. There's not a whole lot we could have done. And also the pre-match show as well, we couldn't do because of Dan's Wi-Fi and because I was ill, actually. I was in bed on Friday night. I didn't think I'd be able to get to the game on Saturday, but I was all good in the morning. So we'll be back on Monday, and then it'll be a normal week following then, hopefully, if Dan gets his Wi-Fi sorted. So thanks everyone for watching today's video. Please leave a like, rating and subscribe if you're not already, and we'll catch you soon. Up the Villa.